Welcome to Wet Soap Wednesday. First time here on Facebook. I'm Kendra, your soapy friend, and today we are going to be making some high temperature hot process soap. I'm going to be using a modified version of my go-to vegan palm-free recipe. That recipe is available on the site, but this will work with any of your favorite recipes. We're just going to be leveraging water temperature and a little bit of friction to make some hot process soap and get it in the mold super fast. I'm going to go ahead and flip you over so you can look down and see what I am doing. I already have my oils heated up. I'm also going to pull live chat up here, so if anyone has any questions as we go, hopefully I can see them. My temperatures are 260 degrees on the oil, so I did warm them up a little higher than normally. I'm normally shooting for about 46 to about 250, and I'll go ahead and get my gloves on, and then we're going to mix up the sodium hydroxide solution, add it to our super hot oils, and make some soap. I already have everything all pre-measured out. So first thing, we'll just get the sodium hydroxide added to our water. So the total liquid content in this recipe is 2 parts sodium hydroxide, 2 parts water, 1 part sodium hydroxide. I'm essentially making a 50-50 ratio sodium hydroxide to distilled water. That's what I have here is distilled water. But then I'm adding in additional liquid. In this case, that additional liquid is aloe vera. We're just going to make sure our sodium hydroxide is dissolved. While that's going on, here's my aloe vera gel. And one of the keys to hot process, especially high temperature countertop hot process, where I'm not creating the soap in a crock pot, so I don't have it continually exposed to a heat source, is to, and even with regular hot process, never add cold stuff to your soap. So what I did here is I just poured off about half of the aloe vera gel, and I'll add this after the cook, just to kind of help bring some of that fluidity back to it. I think I actually want to pour a little bit less, so we'll go about 1/3 of the aloe vera. So I'm putting it here on my hot plate. So by the time we're ready to add it to our hot soap batter, our additives will already be hot. The rest of this, I can just go ahead and add that as additional water in my sodium hydroxide solution. And you can see it's already reacting with the lye. That's kind of that yellow color you're getting there. One thing that's nice about hot process is if you don't master batch your lye, like I obviously didn't for this one, that is perfectly okay because the heat helps you. So the hotter temperature of a fresh lye solution, essentially you don't have to wait for it to cool down before you can use it. I'm going to let this sit for just a minute and give it another stir. Just want to make sure everything's fully dissolved. Now, as far as feel goes, meaning what I feel when I'm stirring it, it appears that everything is dissolved, but I like to give it just another minute to, be fully sure. I'm not going to be streaming any of the lye solution today. We'll just be adding it right in. Okay, let me get some of this out of the way. And this is the mold that we're going to be pouring into. I'll set it aside, pull it back out. It is just a standard slab mold. This is a will-away slab mold, and I just have a plastic liner on it to help release the soap once it's poured. All right, looking good here. So a little bit of the foam kind of that you're seeing on top is just from the sugars in the aloe vera gel. Looking down the side, everything looks as clear as it can be considering there's aloe vera in there. So let me tell you what I suspect is going to happen due to our temperatures, because I'm not going to be able to talk very much while once I add the sodium hydroxide, because things are going to move super, super fast. What's going to happen is a volcanoing. A lot of soap makers think of volcanoes as a negative when they're dealing with cold process soap. And in that case, yeah, it is. But with hot process soap, volcanoes are your friend, because that means things are getting nice and hot and they're working. Now, typically when I do this recipe, I am using a larger pot, but I got like a little bump on the bottom of my pot, my larger one, and it doesn't sit flat anymore, so I need to replace it. So this one, I have just under, I mean, you probably can't tell exactly, this is about halfway full with oils. My other pot is bigger, and so I have about 2/3 of the pot empty once there's only oils in there. That means I have lots of room for volcanoes. With the high heat I have here, and only having about half of the height of my pot, my volcano might overflow. If it does overflow, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. A little bit of wasted soap, but I'll just salt that out anyway. It'll be fine. But once I add the sodium hydroxide, I need to stir like a crazy lady. I do have my stick blender, so I'll add the sodium hydroxide, I'll stick blend, we'll get a bit of a trace, and then I have not one, but 2 stirring spatulas, so we can stir like crazy as those volcanoes come and attempt to lift this up out of the pot. I'll be stirring real hard just to get it back into the pot. Again, if this is my larger pot, I just put the lid on and let those volcanoes rise and fall all on their own. Once everything's done volcanoing and it sits nice and still, that's an indication that your soap's done and ready to put into the mold. All right, let me check for any questions, comments. I see there's about 6 of you out there. Thanks for popping in. I don't get to see all your names like I do on Facebook, but if you do want to drop in and say hi, that'd be great. All right, so let's add our sodium hydroxide and get this soap soaping. It's gonna be hot. It's gonna be fast. And yes, I'm nervous. I think every time I do hot process with you, I'm nervous. Something crazy is gonna happen. So again, very hot oils, very hot lye solution. And you will notice I do have my long sleeve on for this. I also have my legs fully covered. Definitely don't want to get any of that volcano on me, just in case. I hear a little rumbling over on the hot plate. I'll probably want to turn that down. I don't want it to boil away. Okay. Let's keep things out of the way. All right, I'm going to turn that off, but leave the aloe vera gel on the warm burner. So as I mentioned, this is a modified version of my, I had said it's a modified version of the go-to vegan palm-free recipe, but it's actually a modified version of my coconut-free recipe. I apologize for that, which means there's no coconut oil in here. That might give us a little bit slower of a reaction, but not much. Now, if this was 100% coconut oil, this would be going even faster. And I am just keeping this stirring with the stick blender, not worrying about trace. I did cool down a bit. We're about 185 in there, just from all the blending. There's definitely a trace. I'd call this maybe light trace, light to medium. It'll start doing its thing here soon. But you can see once I added that sodium hydroxide how much fuller the pot is now. So now I have maybe a third of my pot empty. Oh, can you see it bubbling? It's bubbling all on its own. So I'll take the stick blender out and pop the lid on. Now, if I worry about this cooling down at all, one thing I really like, this is 172, one thing I really like about countertop hot process or high temperature hot process without a crock pot is how easy it is to just pick this up and put it right back on the burner if I need to. I think you've seen me do that when we were demoing the partial rebatch and making some Christmas coal, or if you have the rebatching masterclass bundle that has the standard rebatching, partial rebatching with the Christmas coal recipe, as well as the cold process rebatching and the salting out soap, all that good stuff. So you see me, you know, leverage this. I really, really like having the hot plate. Now, when I first started soaping, it's getting thicker, so I'm just gonna put that lid on. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to volcano out. When I first started soaping, you know, like most of us, I started soaping in my kitchen, and I would just use the stovetop if I needed to, like, to heat things up. I never really soaped on the stovetop because it was a gas stove. And when we moved into the new studio, I was like, wow, I don't have, you know, I need a heating source. So I got this hot plate, and I think it might just be one of my favorite items in the soap studio here. Oh, look, it's rising up. Better stir. Oh, that's going fast. Okay. Yep, we're gonna go all over the place. Here comes the big spill. That is why I like to have a much larger pot. Because if I had that larger pot, I wouldn't need to be stirring this down. I would just let it rise and fall in the pot itself. Oh, big mess. Here it comes. And the best thing to do is to not stress out, just kind of go through it. You can tell I've had overflowing soaps before. It'll be fine. I know you're probably upset about some of the waste, what looks like waste down here. There we go. But again, I'll salt it out, and I do have in this formula, when I pour into this mold, a little bit extra. I think I'm doing pretty good with just the one-handed stirring here. A little bit extra, so my mold will still be filled up. Yeah, larger pot means you don't need to do this crazy stirring. See how fast that goes? Really need stirring. I could be doing the stick blender, I suppose, but that would just kind of burn it out, and then I'd have to be listening to the stick blender. That happened fast though, didn't it? Once this is done, should be ready to pour. So we just let it rise and fall. And that's pretty much all there is to it. It's so hot that I'm losing some water from all this steam, which is why another bonus to doing this in a larger pot is you don't lose that moisture. So you can, again, you can just leave the lid on. Just switching hands there because that one was getting tired. How thick that is, no coconut oil. Isn't that cool? Activities like this make me wish I was ambidextrous, or at least had worked up my left arm as much as my right arm for some things. It's not sick, there's not a lot of resistance in stirring it, but just the same repetitive motion over and over again. Kind of where gals are at. Can you see all the steam rising up? That's that moisture that we're using. When I'm doing hot process, I typically go at least 2 times the sodium hydroxide for my when I'm making up my lye solution, or the total amount of water in the recipe, which in this case, half of which is the aloe vera. Okay, there we go. I'll do this again with you when I get a replacement for my larger pot, and you can see how we can just let it go and not do all the stirring. Again, the only reason why I'm stirring here is to keep it in the pot. And that works because you're releasing steam, and that's why it's rising up. And what's happening with the volcano is that heat that's building up, it's got to go somewhere. And when you stir, you give it a way to escape, so the steam escapes out of the pot versus your batter escaping out of the pot, like what happened with our spill here. I'm looking up at the camera and noticing that does not look like a very big spill. Once I move the pot, it's a good size spill. But again, that won't go to waste. I'll save it and then we'll salt it out together in a few weeks maybe. How's that sound? Okay, definitely calming down here. We're looking almost appley saucy in here. It's very liquidy, very fluid. Let's see if I need to keep stirring this sucker down. Yep, so here, I'm gonna let you see it rise up over my spatula. See, it's still moving, but not near as fast. So it has not cooled down. What has happened is the saponification process is slowing down because a lot of it's already done its job. So again, it's still rising up. You can still, see those bubbles coming up. Do another stir. Definitely runny applesauce here. But yeah, I do that higher water content on hot process because with that heat and the steam, you do lose some of that water content. It just evaporates off during the cook. Okay, it's calming down a little bit now. I'm gonna wipe some of the oils off my gloves here. They get a little bit slippery. Mess. And now I can put the lid on and wait, or I can give it a couple bursts with the stick blender to kickstart things again. Because I need all that saponification to finish up. And I know it's not done because it still looks very much like applesauce right now. It does not look like a homogeneous mass, not just yet. And, oh, there, see? From the stick blender, there we go, new volcanoes. Volcano phase 2. And that'll get us into some mashed potatoes. We'll let that settle down into Vaseline, and then we'll be done. After we add our remaining additives, in this case it's aloe vera. Yeah, I don't do any scent or color additives to this particular recipe. It's a restock of just a nice, gentle, kind of skin sensitive soap. And I really do love the rustic appearance of hot process. And with the higher olive oil content in this recipe, with your hot process, you're going to have a better lather. Better meaning less slimy. That's what people don't like about high olive oil soaps, is that slimy lather. So you're going to have a better, less slimy lather sooner with hot process than you will with cold process. I honestly don't know why. I just know it is so. And you're going to be able to unmold it more easily with high olive oil soaps. All those lovely volcanoes. With high olive oil soaps, they can become very brittle if you don't unmold them at just the right time. Meaning if you wait too long, they're going to be pretty brittle when you cut. And you do not run into that at all with hot process high olive oil soaps. Oh, that's fun. There's little baby volcanoes happening down on the spill. See? Can you see them? Oh, little baby volcanoes. And again, if I was in the larger pot, I would just have the lid on this whole time. I wouldn't need to do anything other than keep that lid on and let it cook and do its thing. Those volcanoes would be rising and falling. I could be cleaning up messes, doing anything else right now. I'm just grabbing a little scraper and an extra bowl. I think I will go ahead and scrape up some of my mess here just to get it out of the way. And again, this is perfectly decent soap. I could have plopped it back in. My table was clean and sterile before we got started. But then I'd have to worry about that volcano happening again and even more spilling out again because my pot's a little too small for all this. But it'll be okay, as I said, and we'll have fun salting it out. See, it's not that much that spilled out. It's a sizable amount, but nothing worth crying over. You see it volcanoing in there? Hot process being volcanoes. All right, that's nice to have some tidied up a little bit. There, see, it's still rising, it's still volcanoing. It's just going a little slower because most of the chemical reaction has happened, waiting for it to go through its final phases. I can take a temperature for you. It's 223 in there. We just wait. But this part right here, waiting and not stirring, pot's big enough. That's what the whole process is like. Mix it in, stick blend it up, lid on, and wait. You listen to a podcast, maybe read up a blog over on soapyfriends.com. Listen to, read up on what your natural next color adventure is going to be. Did you guys see the colors we made in the Blush and Roses masterclass? Oh my goodness, those pinks. Oh, we even got some lovely pale lavenders with the madder root. Oh, beautiful. definitely big heart and love with all of those soaps. I mainly check in just to keep you updated on what's going on in here too. You can, and I do, again, in the larger pot. And let me grab my larger pot. I think I can access it. Now, it's much larger. So this is a brew pot, but it's got like a little bump on the bottom. I think I can just hammer it out. I'm not sure. But I can normally do 2 batches in this, and 2 batches of oils fills it up to about here. And then once it's all going, it just goes up and down, up and down, up and down. So my pot, for not having to stir and not having to do anything with the hot process, I like the pot to be 2/3 empty once I've got all my stuff in it. So it needs to be what? That makes it 3 times the size you'd need in order to do it. Still cooking away in here. Let me see if I can pull up any of your comments if you have any of them. I'm not sure if I'm seeing them all. Again, first time over here on YouTube. So if you, it says top chat. Oh, there's live chat. I don't see that. Must be you're all just enjoying the view, which is totally fine. But if you do have any questions, you can go ahead and drop them in the comments. We'll have time to. So in order to speed this up even more, you can do 2 things. You can, 1, add more heat. So I could take this and pop it back on the burner if I wanted to. I would have to be careful of burning the bottom. You don't want to burn the bottom of your pot and have burnt soap. Hot process, I've seen a lot of people post, is this a lye heavy spot on my hot process soap? And it looks like a little white, kind of like a lye heavy spot, but it's not. It's overcooked soap that got real dry and kind of crumbly. So little white glops in hot process tend to be overcooked spots. The other thing you can do to get this going, if you don't want to add heat, is to add friction. That's where the stick blender comes in. So that'll get things moving right along again too. See, we're getting more volcanoes coming up out of there. See how fast that's moving now? See that? I actually even need to stir that down. Yeah, I think a lot of people are scared with hot process because it just seems intimidating. I know I was very scared the first time I did it. But once you understand what's going on, it's really quite fun. Again, in the bigger pot. When I've got that bigger, I really need to get my pot fixed, don't I? You know, I can be doing all sorts of other things right now. I don't need to be babying this along. Again, I just put the lid on it and walk away. It's kind of like you're letting it set up in the mold after you make cold process soap, except it's not molded yet. You're just letting it do its thing, rising and falling, and then pour it in the mold. You'll also get a more fluid batter if you can leave the lid on and just let it wait. And again, that's because you have less water evaporation, just simply because you left the lid on. Get another volcano going. Let it do its thing. Look at that. That's so cool. Once everything is saponified and you'll know that because you won't get any more volcanoes appearing. Then you can, you know, add all your colorants, your essential oils, all that good stuff. Next time I make that cinnamon soap for that customer I have that loves that cinnamon soap, we'll definitely do that hot process again. Because with cold process, that cinnamon, as we all now know, 100% for sure, proof, soap on a stick proof, cinnamon is not your friend with cold process soap, but it works fantastic in hot process. Also with the hot process soap method, you can be adding all sorts of additives that don't work well in cold process soap, namely essential oils that don't stick. You can, meaning their scent fades and the chemical reaction just really kills the aroma. Adding them to hot process soap, you can add them after saponification. That's what's called adding them after the cook. You can also, which I love, is add way less of your essential oil. So you could, like with that cinnamon, it's a cinnamon and orange blend that I've been doing, and I think it's only 1% of the total. I mean, it might even be less than 1% of the recipe is essential oil. With lavender and many other essential oils, you're using, you know, again, depending on the essential oil, maybe 2% of the entire batch. And yeah, in many cases with hot process, adding those in after the cook, you can add half the amount and end up with an even stronger smell. This is mostly done, my dear soapy friends. It's starting to look less like mashed potatoes, and it's really starting to hit the Vaseline phase. Oh, I'm kind of glad we did this without the big pot rising and falling without us seeing, because you're getting to see all these different stages. But see, mashed potatoes. If you ever wonder what mashed potatoes look like, when someone says it'll look like mashed potatoes, this is mashed potatoes. Just letting it cook away. I could have some cellophane over here on top, try and keep that in and still let you look in, but yeah, it'll be fine. Definitely losing lots of heat though with this lid off. 221. We'd probably be closer to 230, 240 if we had that lid on. Now, when I'm adding special super fats, that's another bonus of hot process, is adding those special super fats. I also do that after the cook. That way you know for sure what did or did not saponify. Any oils you add after the cook are not going to saponify, assuming it really is just your super fat. But remember, you want to keep all those things warm, whether it's extra your unsaponified super fat, maybe some extra aloe vera, essential oils, anything, milks, anything else you're adding. See, we're getting Vaseline over here. That's the Vaseline stage, where it looks like Vaseline. But you really, you need to keep all those additives hot, because if you add cold additives to your hot process soap, you're going to cool it down, and you don't want to do that. That's going to really negatively affect the fluidity of your batter. And you'll know when it's all done and all saponified, as I said, once everything's all Vaselined up and you're not getting any more of those volcanoes. So it's just sitting nice and warm and it's not gurgling and moving on you anymore. That's when you want to add any of those delicate additives. Now with my aloe vera here, I'm not worried about it being damaged by the sodium hydroxide in here. You saw me add a bunch of it along with the lye solution. I like to add it in after the cook because, well, I pour in a little extra just to help with that fluidity. And I'll do that in just a minute here, probably next time I peek, even if we're not fully done saponifying. Again, because I'm not worried about the saponification affecting that aloe vera already in there. Really just using it for a fluidity trick. Other things that'll help you with fluidity aside from the higher water content include sodium lactate or anything with lactose in it, such as milks and yogurts. Any dairy product really helps with that fluidity. I have not done hot process with coconut milk, but I've heard that that also helps greatly with fluidity. That might be the same way that aloe vera works because it is just adding additional liquid. And I'm going to go ahead and add this in. It was, I did check, it was 120 degrees. So definitely not as hot as the batter was. Yeah, we're mostly done in here. But again, it was not cold. You know, I'm not going to be asking you to heat your essential oils up to 200 degrees or anything. They just, you know, warm them up. Warm them up. See how it's all Vaseline in there? Hold some up closer to the camera for you. That's that Vaseline stage that we're looking at. We're looking for, so we know we're ready to mold. Just going to give it a couple more stirs, make sure everything's well incorporated. It's still really easy to stir. Looking great. I just feel like these gloves are extra slippery today. Okay. Go. All right, let's get this in the mold. Now, with the larger pot, again, this is all what I would do with a larger pot day. I kind of put this on, I have a cart that's a little bit lower than my table, so I can just kind of dump the pot onto without lifting. But this one I can actually lift pretty well. Oh, almost all of it out in one fell swoop of a pour. Take those sides down a bit. Like I said, these gloves feel extra slippery today. There's just like the littlest bit that doesn't want to, there we go. There we go. See how messy that pot is from that volcano? All right, there we go. For this particular soap, this is all I need to do. Get it in the mold, kind of flatten that top down, and I am done. It's hot process, so I don't need to worry about insulating. I'm not going to get soda ash. I don't need to cover with towels and molds and heating pads or worry about keeping the counter cool or putting it in the fridge to avoid gel or any of that. I mean, it's gel, it is soap. The soap is just really hot when it's in the mold. So I want to be done with it. You know, I could do some designs and stuff on the top, of course. Valerie Mosier has some wonderful high temp hot process design videos if you want to go check those out. We'll probably do some in the future too. But for my hot process, this is kind of pretty much it. I might even end up sliding that top off just so these will fit in their boxes for packaging. But yeah, so there we go. We just did some hot process soap. Took a little bit longer than I thought. Probably just due to the little overflow there. But I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you answered a lot of questions you have. I will pop in and check chat again, or you can hit me up over in the Facebook group, or even just drop comments down below on the replay here. And thank you for joining me for another Wet Soap Wednesday live here on YouTube. I'll see you next week. And until then, happy soaping, my soapy friends. Bye-bye.